change will happen. Yeah, that's it. There you go. Look up here for a moment before we step into our next portion of the night. Whatever you're walking through, whatever you are encountering, this song carries so much weight. This song carries so much expectancy on what we've been talking about. So as we've been saying last month, you can't expect great things from God if you don't expect great things from God. So I don't know tonight if you've walked into this room with like a mindset of like, I'm here, I'm just wanting some tacos, and I want to get gas and leave, and that's it. Right? Like maybe that's you. Maybe you're in here and you're like, man, I came to this place and I'm hungry and I want to meet with Jesus. Yeah. Maybe you're here and you're like, man, I'm broken and I don't even know what I need tonight. Yeah. Whatever it is, there can't be this many people in a room and someone not going through something. There can't be this many people in one room that cannot be expecting something from Jesus. The Bible says that when two or more are gathered in His name, the presence will show up. So I don't know about you, I don't know what you need from Him, but for me, man, I've been at camp and I've been experiencing God all week, but I need something more from Him. I'm on this like standby mode right now because I've been traveling, but I can't do it on my own. So I need the Holy Spirit's help. I need His presence. We can't do this alone without His presence, because without it, y'all, this is just a hangout. Yeah. Without it, this is just a song. Without it, this is just a night where you come, play Smash Bros, leave, and that's it. But when His presence shows up, it changes everything. And that's the only reason why we need to be here. Listen, this stuff is fun right now. The games are fun, the food is fun, but this is why we're here. To meet with Him. And we've said it for the past few months, we will never substitute a fun night just so we can, or we'll never substitute the presence of Jesus just so we can go and have fun out there. So I know y'all might be hungry and we're going to preach in a little bit. But I think we just need to keep singing that song for a few moments. So close your eyes. And this is my challenge to you. As we've been talking the past few weeks, expect something from Him. Man, it could be big, it could be small, but expect something from Him tonight. Whether it's a breakthrough in your life, whether it's a fresh filling of the Holy Spirit, whether it's a healing, whether it's a word that you're needing to hear from Him. Begin right now in this moment to expect something from Him. So would you just lift your hands? Come on, don't be ashamed. It's just a sign of surrender. And with that mindset of expectation, right, this reality that God is going to do something, begin to shift the atmosphere like we were saying. And begin to expect that God will move. Come on, sing it out. Something has to break. Sing it out, come on. Something has to break. Right now in your name. Come on, come on. Something has to break. Sing it with expectancy. Something has to break. Something has to break. Right now in your name. Something has to break. Tonight, God, that something would break, that something would break in our lives, that something would break spiritually, that something would break in this room, that we would leave this place changed, that we would leave this place having a genuine encounter and a genuine experience with your presence. Oh, Father God, we need you in this room. Holy Spirit, come and do what only you can do. Come and guide us, come and direct us, come and speak to us. Come on, as a young adults group, one last thing. I know it's kind of become redundant, but can we just lift our hands one more time and let's declare this together. Say, I expect great things from you. Come on, we're going to keep singing it a few times. Say, I expect great things from you. Say it over your life. Come on, I expect great things. One more time. All right, that wasn't good enough. One last time, as loud as you can. I expect great things. Amen, amen. Go ahead and take your seats, y'all. Go ahead, stay in this mindset. Could someone grab me a bottle of water, please? Man, we are excited for young adults. Who's happy to be here tonight? Yes, sir, that was lame. Who is excited to be here tonight? I'll probably need that one too. It might sound weird. I've been at camp all week, y'all, in 107-degree weather with no humidity, so my voice is struggling. But listen, tonight we want to welcome you to Vive. A few things before we get started. If you are new, we're not going to ask you to stand up, but if you're new, go ahead and just wave your hand at me. Go ahead and wave your hand. Come on, I know there's a lot of new people. Vive, welcome them, y'all. Come on, welcome them, welcome them, welcome them. Hey, we are excited that you guys are here. And tonight, one thing we're going to do is this. We will unashamedly share the gospel of Jesus with you tonight. I don't know where you are at your walk with Christ, but that is what we do here. If you've seen our shirts, we are created for community. We truly believe that that is what God created us for, to do life together. So no matter where you are at, no matter what you are going through, you are welcome into this place, and we are glad that you're here. But tonight, what I want to do before we get started is this. If you see our shirts, the majority of you have seen them. Tonight is the only night that you can get these for $15. Does everybody like them? They look good, right? Shout out to my wife, Abby. She's not here. She's in Kansas. She designed them. But Pastor Nancy was selling them out there. We take Apple Pay. We take debit card. We take cash. So if you don't have a shirt, make sure at the end of the night you guys get a shirt, because we want to take a group picture. Let's do this. Who's new in here? Who's new? Jenna, right? Your name is Jenna. Everyone say hi, Jenna. Jenna, I'm going to embarrass a little bit, but Jenna messaged our church on Facebook, reaching out to our young adults group, and she showed up. So Jenna, at the end of service, just see one of us and we'll get you a free shirt, okay? All right, so listen, next thing is this. I know Glendy and Jazz hit this up, but we have our young adults retreat coming up in September. We are super excited, but listen, I signed a contract on this thing, and I only have one deposit so far. I know I got a lot of people signed up, but I can only take 24 people, so I need your deposits in. I want to encourage you, this is going to be a time where you can get away from the hustle of life and the busyness, get away from your kids, and you can go and just spend some intentional time with Jesus. There's a zip line there, there's a pool, there's this thing called human foosball, like we ever play foosball, but it's with humans. I don't know, it sounds pretty cool. But we're just going to be having some intentional time focusing on Jesus. That deposit, you can turn in right up here at the check-in table. That's $50. That will secure your spot. And the total amount is $108. But tonight, let's dive in. Everybody say expectation. So we kicked this off last month talking about expectation, what it's like to expect things from God. And we closed out our sermon with, you can't expect great things from God if you're not expecting great things from God. And tonight I kind of want to change our perspective on when our expectations of God kind of fall short. And I think this, as I've been looking at it, one of the most detrimental things to a relationship. Who's ever been in a relationship before? All right. Who's in a relationship right now? Okay, all right. One of the most detrimental things to a relationship, I believe, is this: unrealistic expectations. Would you all agree? Like, think about it, right? Like, when I'm expecting something of you that hasn't been promised or defined, that's where an unrealistic expectation is. Married people say, hey, give me a horny out. Angie and Carrie are the loudest still. I don't know why. But here's the thing, okay? I looked this up. This doesn't have to do just with married people tonight. But top unrealistic expectations in relationships and spouses. All right, here they are. You ready? And you can chime in if you agree or not. You'll never notice anyone else. Top unrealistic expectations. That person will always be romantic with you. That person will always have money. Here's one. That person will never forget your birthday. Dang. All right, let's be honest. Who in here has had someone that you liked forget your birthday? Oh, Corey raised his hand with his wife sitting right there. Okay, awkward. All right, come on, we're adults. Here's one: unrealistic expectations about relationship, that they're always going to want to have sex. It just got really quiet. Not true. Okay. Unrealistic expectation that your bathroom will always be clean. Can I just take a moment and say this? This is weird, okay? Because, It's weird. I'll trim my beard and I'll clean it up, and like I'll leave like maybe 1 or 2 hairs like on the counter or the sink, but I clean it up as soon as I'm done, and then I go take a shower.
Let's go!
Y'all know. And my wife like puts her hair on the wall, and she like decorates it, makes a Picasso, right? And like there's this clump of hair that's been sitting in my shower for 2 months in the corner, and then I shave my beard before I leave for Kansas, and she's like, babe, you left a piece of hair. Makes no sense. Unrealistic expectation. They will always say the right thing. Unrealistic expectation that you're never going to have an argument. Abby, she's not here so I can talk freely tonight. I think she's actually watching. Oops. Abby has this unrealistic expectation of me when we got married, and it ain't there anymore because I proved it to her, but that I would take care of spiders and bugs. No, y'all. So like when we got married, there's a spider on the wall. It was like 2 in the morning. I don't even know why we were up. And she's like, babe, there's a spider. I'm like, okay, go kill it. It's like, no, I can't. I'm like, your sandal is right there. I'm on the other side of the room. Just pick it up and go and kill it. She's like, no. So she made me go kill it, right? So I go and kill it, and I think I hit it, and this thing jumps, and I'm like, ah! Right? I like freak out. Unrealistic expectation. I don't kill spiders. We were at camp this past week. Y'all, listen, this camp that we were at was like brown recluse central. I killed like 20, Emily will attest. I killed like 20 brown recluses, but I made Abby kill half of them. We had that balance in our marriage, right? Unrealistic expectations. She thought that I would always kill the spiders and bugs. Not true. Unrealistic expectations that comes on the screen is this. Unrealistic expectations equals unmet expectations. What happens when there are unmet expectations? Think about it. Think of your own life. What happens in your life when there are unmet expectations for you? Maybe you become frustrated. Maybe you become angry. Maybe like a conflict starts to arrive with that other person that you're having these expectations of. So let's think about this. Most of us in this room, when it comes to our relationship with God, sometimes we have a very unrealistic expectation of who God should be or what God should do. Like, think about it. We expect God to do things that He never promised He would do, just because He's God and He can do anything. And a lot of times, maybe some point in your life, you've treated God like a vending machine. Like, think about it, right? Like a vending machine. I wish I had one here because they're so cool. Vending machine, right? You have all the choices. You got Snickers, you got Doritos, you got Starburst, you got the weird beef jerky, you got the gum, you got all that stuff, right? It has everything you want on this machine. And what do? You put the right amount of money in, and you press the right buttons, and you get what you want, right? But think about this. A lot of us treat our relationship with God sometimes like a vending machine. Maybe you've had the mindset of, well, if I push the right buttons, if I come to young adults, if I maybe pray the right words, if I give the right amount of money in the offering, if I say the right things, then God will answer my prayer. God will come through if I do these things. And we come into this relationship with God, and we think like there's a specific formula that we have to tap into for Him to do something. Like, think about it, right? Like, maybe you say, you're like, if I do X, Y, and Z, then God will do X, Y, and Z. Have you ever thought that before? Yeah. I have. Oh man, if I fast for 3 days, then God will do this. Sometimes that's true. If I give $150 to this missionary, God will bless me. This is dangerous for us young adults to have this mindset. Because here's the thing, I want to have this perspective. What is the worst thing about a vending machine? When it gets stuck, right? When it breaks down. Come on, who in here had before like Michelle Obama got in office and took away all the good snacks? Do you remember when we had like sodas in the vending machines and Powerades and all that good stuff, right? And your chips. And what would happen? You press your button and it gets stuck, right? And then you have to be like, kick it, try and shake it, get it all out. It's frustrating when we don't get the thing we prayed for. Would you agree? Yeah. Come on. It's frustrating when we don't get the thing we prayed for. When we treat God like a vending machine and we don't get what we want, it angers us. When we treat God like a vending machine and we don't get what we want, it hurts us. It causes relational strife with God. It frustrates us. And ultimately, unfortunately, when we don't get what we want from God, we begin to lose trust in Him. And sometimes if you're not plugged into your faith, if you're not grounded in your faith, you begin to avoid him. Because here's the thing. It always seems like the more I expect, the less he comes through for me sometimes with that mindset. Well, God, I asked you to take away this pain. I prayed, I had faith, but nothing's changed. Maybe you're in here and you can relate to this one. God, I asked you to heal my family member. I prayed nonstop. I fasted. I did this, but nothing happened. God, I asked you to take away my depression, but nothing's changed. God, I've asked you to change my relationship status, but you still haven't brought me a man or woman. God, I've done all I know to do, and it seems like you right now in this moment have done nothing in return. And just like a vending machine steals our money, we feel like God steals from us. And let me remind you of this tonight, of this truth. God is not a vending machine. God is God. God is not a vending machine. God is God. God just isn't something where we can say what we want and he provides in that moment exactly how we think he should provide. Can I tell you this, young adults, tonight, that God's expectations are different than our expectations. God's desires for your life are different than the desires that we want for our life. His ways, his thoughts, his desires are different than ours. His timeline is different than our timeline. God is not a vending machine. God is God. And I want you to think of this question tonight as we get ready to dive in, is what do we do when our expectation doesn't meet? Or I'm sorry, what do we do when our experience doesn't meet our expectation of God? What do we do when our experience doesn't match our expectation of God? And there's a story tonight that we're going to look at in the Bible in a few minutes of Abram and Sarai. Everybody say Abram and Sarai. And we're going to start up and pick up the story at the end of Genesis 13. And basically some context of what we're going to be reading. Like, God comes to Abram and it says that God calls him to inhabit a land that God has for him. And God also says at the end of this passage, we're going to look at that, to your offspring I will give this land. So basically, hey, Abram, here's this land that I've called you to, but I'm not just going to give it to you, I'm going to give it to your children to inherit. And here's the problem. It says that God's going to give this land to his children, but Abram and Sarai at this time are probably like in their 70s. And we all know what that means, right? Ain't no baby happening with that. The Bible says that Sarai is barren. Despite this, right? Like, despite the natural facts of Sarai being barren, Abram and her being 70 years old, despite this, God makes a covenant, right? And what's a covenant? It's just a promise. Yeah. Despite this, God makes a covenant with them, a promise with Abram and Sarai that they will have children. So as it comes on the screen tonight, if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn to Genesis 13, verses 14 through 17. And it says this. The Lord said to Abram after Lot had parted from him, look around from where you are, to the north and to the south, to the east and west. All the land that you see I will give to you and your offspring forever. Verse 16 goes on to say, I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted. Go walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I am giving it to you. So Abram and Sarai get this promise from God. And what I love about this passage right here, what I love about this covenant between Abram and God is this, is that the supernatural always supersedes the natural. The supernatural, write that down, always supersedes the natural. Vive, young adults, God can take any situation that you are walking through. God can take anything that you may be encountering in this moment and make it possible. God, through him, all things are possible. So God does this, right? He makes covenant with Abram that he will have a child. So now we have Abram and Sarai, and they have this expectation, right? Like, okay, God promised it, let's go. We have an expectation. Based off of God's promises, they now have this expectation. So they get to work, literally and figuratively. Let's get it on, all right? Okay. 10 years go by. And nothing. That's a lot of trying, y'all. 10 years go by. And nothing happens. And maybe that's you right now in this room. Maybe you find yourself sitting in your chair tonight. And maybe you find yourself sitting in this place where a while ago God promised you something. Maybe you find yourself where you are down at this altar right here. Maybe you find yourself at a specific place in your life right now and nothing's happened. But God's promised you something. Put yourself in Abram and Sarai's shoes. 10 years go by for Abram and Sarai. Nothing was happening. Nothing was shifting. Nothing was changing for them. There was no sign of a child whatsoever. There wasn't even like pre-pregnancy, if that's even a thing. There wasn't even like any signs of anything. And what I love about this story is in these 10 years, these first 10 years, Abram and Sarai stayed faithful to God. Yes. They didn't waver from their faith. They didn't waver from the promise of God. They kept walking towards their promise. They kept moving in faith. And the story goes on to say that as they continued to take steps, God began to bless them with livestock. That God began to bless them with silver. That God began to bless them with gold and all these things. And Vive, they kept taking promises or steps towards their promise. And here's the thing, unfortunately, that a lot of us do. We expect God to do something, but we take no steps of faith towards our promise.
Say it again.
We expect God is going to do something that He's promised us, but we take no steps of faith towards the promise that He gave us. Like, you know what God has spoken to you, but what work are you doing? That's like, I remember my grandma living here. She's like, oh, I know I need a house. God will give it to me, but she's not really looking for a house. Y'all, Medea even said it in one of her movies. You got to do something. When God tells you to do something, you got to put the work in. Something like that, right? You have to take steps toward your promise. God has spoken something to each and every one of you in this room at some point in your life, maybe. And here's my challenge to you. In this season, right now, in this moment, in this room, despite what you're walking through, maybe your promise hasn't been fulfilled. Keep taking steps towards your promise that you know that God has given you. Keep walking, keep walking, keep walking, and keep pushing through because you might be right there. And you might be on the edge of stopping, but you might be this close to your promise. Put in the work, put in the faith, and keep going. And maybe you're here tonight, if I can be real and open with you. Maybe you're in this room, and God's promised you something. Maybe He's promised someone in this room that He would heal you from emotional damage. Expect it. Believe it. Pray for it. But maybe you should take steps towards healing with your emotional damage. See a counselor. Seek out help. Seek therapy. Talk to a friend. Put in the work. Put steps into your promise. Maybe you're in this room and God promised you freedom from addiction, but you haven't done one thing to get free from it. Expect it. Believe that you're going to get free from it. Pray for it. But put in the work. Be accountable with someone. Do something. Put steps toward your promise. Don't just sit back and wait for the promise to be fulfilled. Put in your work. Expectation is this, is believing God is going to do something, but faith is taking a courageous step towards that belief. It's easy to expect something, but it takes a lot more to actually step into something that you believe is going to happen. Abram and Sarai, think about this. During these 10 years, it said that they were faithful to God, they stayed faithful, and they provided in the land, and they had cattle, and they had silver, and they had gold, right? But they still didn't get their promise. Like, God provided for them. He gave them all those things. Like, hey, gold sounds nice. I'll take that. Silver sounds nice. I'll take that. I'll take a cow right now because food's so expensive. All that stuff sounds great, but it wasn't the promise that God gave them. But they still stayed faithful in these times. Isn't that just like us sometimes? Maybe everything in life right now maybe for you is great. But there's still that one thing that God has promised you that you might not have received yet. You still haven't received it, and you still want it, you still expect it. Abram and Sarai didn't forget about the promise, but God didn't forget either. And what's interesting is this, after God promises this, it says that Abram builds an altar. And he does it actually multiple times. And in this passage, if you continue to read it, Genesis 13 and through a couple chapters after, God comes to Abram 3 different times to give him this promise. Like this reassurance of, hey, Here's what I promise you. Here's what I'm going to do. And it says this, that every time Abram built an altar. Now, not like an altar like this, I don't suppose, but here's the significance about this. When you would build an altar back in the Old Testament, a lot of times we know it was for sacrifices. Prepare the sacrifice, right? Like it was for sacrifices. The other reason, though, that people would build altars is to commemorate an encounter with God so that they would never forget what happened. And I remember the camp that I was just at 5 years ago. Well, I was there this past week, but 5 years ago they celebrated, I think, their 100th year of being in camp. And if you were at this camp, you would know it's 100 years old, okay? But they did this video of everybody who was still living who have ever attended this camp. It was pretty powerful. And it took them about 6 to 8 months to film this video, but they had everybody who has ever been to Wheat State Camp, or whoever has had an experience with God, or God's done something in their life at the altars at Wheat State Camp. They gave them a red balloon with a piece of tape on it, and they had them tape it to their spot. And it was incredible to see that over like 600 people that were still around from when the camp first started, they knew their exact spot in that camp room where God met with them. Yes. They knew that exact spot where they encountered God. And I remember seeing that video of literally almost 1,000 red balloons where God promised them something or where they encountered something. But an altar was built in the Old Testament to commemorate an encounter with God. And Abram built an altar every time God promised him. And it says that he would go back to the altar sometimes. Why would he go back? Why would he go back to these 3 altars that he made? Maybe because when he got disappointed, he would go back. Yeah. Maybe when he questioned God, maybe when those times of doubt started to fill his mind, he would go back. Maybe when he struggled with his walk with God, he would go back. Maybe when his wife's unrealistic expectations of him got overwhelming, he would go back. Maybe, which I'm pretty sure after 10 years of trying for a kid, he would go back to commemorate what God promised him. And young adults, that's why we open up our word. Yeah. That's why we pray. That's why we worship. That's why we come to young adults to commemorate an encounter with God. Man, I know growing up here when I was 18 and out of high school, I can still recall the multiple experience I had in this spot right here, probably in that spot, right over there. Vanessa can probably remember every encounter that she had in this room, on this platform, on the floor. Bucky, Rena can remember each spot probably where they cried for hours, hearing the voice of God. We have to remember his faithfulness. And we have to remember his goodness that the Bible tells us and his promises. And a lot of us maybe, unfortunately, we have these moments with God, but then little by little we wander. We wander when things don't go well. We wander when things get tough, and we realize that we're really far away from that encounter from God. And we keep moving farther and farther and farther from the promises that God has given us. Vive, God will and has promised you things. But the further you run from the process, the further you run from the promises of God. Sometimes you have to rise up, Vive, when nothing is happening in life. Sometimes you have to press through, and sometimes you just have to declare that I'm still going to open up the Word no matter how busy of a day that I've had. Sometimes you got to press through, and you got to say that I'm going to still come to church despite how crappy I feel right now, despite how annoyed I am at my kids, despite how frustrated I am with my spouse. You still have to push through. You still have to push through and remember, and going to remember that his faithfulness and his goodness and the promises of God. Remember those things when you're going through times of struggle. And the story goes on that we're talking about tonight, and it says that nothing happens. 10 years passes. 15 years passes. More years pass. And at this point, I could understand Abram and Sarai's frustration. I could understand them getting discouraged. And it says that Abram and Sarai become desperate. And what do? The Bible goes on to say that they begin to take matters into their own hands. And if you read the story, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but Sarai has Abram sleep with her servant. That's some crazy stuff. Jerry, okay? And what happens is this. He sleeps with Sarai's servant, and they have a baby together. Right? They have this baby together. And of course, it causes all sorts of drama, which is crazy because Sarai told Abram to go sleep with her servant, so Abram listened to his wife, which is what a wife wants, and what a guy thinks would make a wife happy is listening to his wife, and so Abram sleeps with her servant, the servant gets pregnant, and then Sarai gets mad at Abram. And Sarai gets mad at the servant, and treats the servant really bad. And Abram gets treated bad because he listened to his wife. Makes no sense, right? TV show. A lot of us become so desperate, listen, a lot of us become so desperate for God to move, and we feel like God's not moving, so we choose just to take it into our own hands. We say this a lot of times to God. We say, God, you see what I'm going through. You see that the situation that I'm facing. You see the struggle that I'm encountering. You see the hurt that I'm experiencing right now. And you haven't moved in my life, so I'm going to move on my own. And we take it into our own hands. And maybe this is you tonight. I don't know. But maybe you say this to God. God, you see how depressed I am, and nothing is happening when I pray. God, you see how depressed I am, and nothing is happening when I talk to people. Nothing is happening when I read your word right now. So I'm going to go back to what I know that used to help me. I'm going to go back to the thing that helped me, even though this is the only thing that can help me, but it's not helping me right now. So I'm going to go back to it and turn to it and let that help me. And go farther away. God, you see the relational crap that I've experienced, but it doesn't really seem like you care. So, I'm just going to move on to the next person and get hurt. Man, I remember, if you've heard my story before, being engaged, and literally like a month, 2 months before my wedding, things happened, and it got broke off for reasons. And I remember being so mad, so frustrated, and then it settled down, and we got back together, got engaged again, and then it happened again. And I remember waiting, years, and praying to God, God, bring me someone. Yo, at that point, I was about to take anything that I could get. Okay? I mean, if we can't be real in here, where can we be real? I remember I was at camp a couple years ago at a leadership session, and our DYD was like, how many of y'all in here want a trophy wife? And I just yelled out, I'll take anything I can get at this point in life. Right? But think about that. We prayed so long for something to happen. We pray for God to heal us, or we pray for God to deliver us from this, and we don't see really any fruits from anything, so we decide to take it into our own hands. Maybe you're guilty of that tonight. When we take things into our own hands, young adults, the situation always gets worse. That's right. It will always get worse. And Abram and Sarai took the situation in their own hands. And it caused so much drama, I can't even go into it for time's sake. The wars, the fights, the things like that are still going on to this day. And what I love about this right here is this, as it comes on the screen. Even when you lose faith, God never loses his faithfulness. Even when you lose faith, God never loses his faithfulness. Even when you are up and down and you are debating on serving him, he's constant. Even when you are changing and debating things, he's never changing. Even when you struggle, he stays the same. Who God was for Abram and Sarai is who he is for you. Yes. God made them a promise, and he stayed faithful to them, even though Sarai and Abram didn't stay faithful to him. I want to skip forward to Genesis 21, 1 through 7. And it says this as it comes on the screen. Now the Lord was gracious. Everybody say gracious. Gracious. Now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said. So you're like, wait, I thought her name was Sarai. Read the story, her name gets changed, okay? So now the Lord was gracious to Sarah, as he had said. And the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had promised him. Abraham gave the name Isaac to the son Sarah bore him. When his son Isaac was 8 years old, Abram circumcised him as God commanded him. Abram was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. 100 years old! Yo, that dude... I don't know, okay, not even going there. 100 years old when his son was born to him. Sarah said this, God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me. And she added, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children, yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Vive, it took them 25 years from when the promise was given and the promise was fulfilled. 25 years! Man, my daughter Philly doesn't forget a promise that I promised her. Like in 10 minutes, she's already saying, well, you promised me to do this. I promised to take her to the lake at camp, and I really didn't want to swim in it, so I made our nanny that came with us swim in the lake with her because it was so disgusting. But she didn't forget the promise that I made her. 25 years! The promise fulfilled, Vive, will always look different than the promise given when it comes to God. What you feel like God has spoken to you may always look different at its fulfillment. Maybe that's in its time frame. Maybe on how God has it happen. It doesn't always look the way we think it's going to look. And understand this as we get ready to wrap it up. Understand this tonight, that the promise of the Son was not fulfilled because Abram was perfect in his obedience. It's because God was faithful to his word. Yeah. Think about that. It's not because Abram was faithful in his obedience, because he wasn't. It was because God was faithful to his word. Yeah. God's promises, Vive, for you will never return void. Emily, you can come on up. You might be here tonight, and you might be thinking, good for Abram, but my promise still hasn't come true. My promise is still sitting right in front of me, and it isn't fulfilled. Vive, Abram believed it because God said it. Sometimes we expect God to do something that God never promised us. Think about it. Sometimes we expect God to do something for us that he never promised us he would do. We expect him to give us that promotion at work, but he never promised you the promotion at work. We expect him to give us this perfect and beautiful relationship when God never promised you a perfect and beautiful relationship. We expect our relationship with God to be perfect and all roses and smell good, but he never promised our walk with him to be easy. In fact, he says it's otherwise. God moves most when my expectations align with the promises of God. And I heard this the other day. I don't take credit for it. When your expectations begin to align with your promises, then all of a sudden your heart begins to align with his heart. And as your heart aligns to his heart, your heart begins to align with his desires. Listen to that again. When your expectations begin to align with your promises, then all of a sudden your heart begins to align with his heart. And as your heart aligns to his heart, your heart begins to align with his desires. When our expectations, Vive, align with the promises of God, that's when God begins to move. It always takes faith. It always takes faith. You can't expect great things from God if you're not expecting great things from God. I truly believe it. Stand with me tonight. Keep this mindset, keep this attitude for a few moments. We're going to move through this a little bit quickly, but these scriptures are going to come up on the screen as I read them. God's given you a promise, Vive, but you have to take steps towards that promise. And maybe tonight you find yourself in this room. I guarantee you someone's relating with at least one of these. Maybe you find yourself in this room and you're tired. Who's tired? Not physically, but like spiritually. Okay, who's tired physically? Come on. Okay. Maybe you find yourself tired. Matthew 11:28 says this, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So we just said when God gives us a promise, we have to take a step towards it, right? So as we look at that scripture right there, come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. So what's the step in this? What do? The step in this is to come to him, right? Pray to him. Seek after him. Who's ever been anxious in this room? Maybe you're anxious in this moment. Philippians chapter 4, verses 6 through 7 says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, submit, or with thanksgiving, present your request to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Jesus Christ. The step in this right here is flat out prayer. When you're anxious, pray. When you're lost, when you're confused, Psalms 119 verse 10 says, I seek you. Everybody say, I seek you. I seek you with all my heart. Do not let me stray from your commands. The step in this is simply read the word. Get in it. Study it. when you're feeling weak physically, when you're feeling weak spiritually. Ephesians chapter 3 verse 20 says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us." Again, the step is prayer. This one's big, maybe. Maybe you've been in here and you feel no joy. Maybe it's been a long time since you felt joy. Psalm 16:11 says, "You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand." And I love this step. It's just simply being in his presence. When you are in the presence of Jesus, it changes everything. When you are in these moments down here just seeking after him, and you can set aside whatever you've experienced this past week and just fix your eyes and your attention on him, it changes everything. The presence of Jesus changes everything. All eyes up here as we close tonight. God promised you young adults. He promises you things. God promises you peace. God promises you guidance. God promises you protection. But it still takes putting action behind it. You coming 2 hours once a month to Revive is not enough to sustain you. You coming 2 hours to a service is not enough for you to experience the promises of God. Sorry. You coming to church once a week is not enough for you to experience the promises of God. Church was never intended for something to sustain you. That's why we do community together. That's why we do life together. That's why our shirts say created for community, so we can walk through life together and be in community with each other like God commands us to do, and to help each other with our struggles. But 2 hours a month in this room is not enough for you young adults. It's not. You have to find time. Set a time. Set a place to pray. Set a time. Set a place each day to read the Word. Don't just read like a scripture and be done with it. Study it. Write it down. Do a SOAP, scripture, observation, application, prayer, whatever that looks like for you. Take steps towards your promise. All eyes closed. And as we start to wrap this up, as we start to shift into this next moment, I don't know where everyone is at spiritually with their walk with God. I don't know if you've accepted him as your Savior. I don't know if you're living for him. I know some of you are. But if you would say tonight, Pastor Michael, I'm in this room and this is the key, I've never accepted Jesus as my Savior. I've never made that decision to follow after him. If that's you tonight, and you would say, Pastor Michael, something tonight is moving on my heart, it's just the Holy Spirit speaking to you in this moment. If you would say, I have never accepted the forgiving grace of Jesus Christ, but tonight I want to make that decision. Would you just lift your hand up so I can see it tonight? I'd like to make that decision. Okay. The next thing tonight I want to do is this. If you're in here and you're struggling, just lift your hand up. Come on, be honest. If you're in here and you're struggling, come on, raise it up. Okay? Put it down. It's okay to struggle, young adults. Every single one of us in this room struggle. Like we say it all the time. Of course we struggle, we just don't quit. We press on. When we mess up, we get back up. If you would say tonight, this is the last thing, that there's something that God has promised you, and you're really struggling to believe that promise, raise your hand. If there is something in your life that God has promised you, and it's really hard to see how that's going to happen, or why it's even been promised to you, or why you're even believing that promise, raise your hand. Keep it up. God will always be faithful to his word. It took Abram and Sarai 25 years for God's promise to be fulfilled. And I have no answers to you tonight as to why sometimes it takes so long for things. I have no answers for you as to why it happens the way it does. But can I just encourage you that God will be faithful? But you need to stay faithful too. There may be times you mess up, but you need to be faithful, but you need to put in work as well. So tonight what I want to do is this. If there's something you just want prayer for tonight, something, it doesn't have to be big, it doesn't have to be small, but man, this is the place right here where we can come together as a family and to lift each other up in prayer. So if you raise your hand and you're having a hard time believing a promise that God has given to you, can you come on down for that first group? If you're having a hard time believing the promise that God has given you, come on down to the front. Come on. Come on, there were more people that raised their hand. This is the place right here. Come on. Come on. If you would say tonight, and you're still in your seat, that you just need something from Jesus tonight, like your tank's on empty. You just need a fresh filling from him. Would you come on down? Come on, if you just want to experience Jesus tonight, would you just come on down? Come on. If you just want to experience Jesus. Here you go. I don't know what you're walking through. I don't know what promises God has given to some of you. Some of you that I know really personally, I know what he's promised you. I know promises that God has given me. And I know at times I've questioned them. I remember waiting for God to bring someone into my life, and I remember getting mad at God because it wasn't happening. I remember beginning to lose faith. I remember getting depressed. I remember getting mad at anybody who had another person in their life. Vive, God wants to meet you in this place, and maybe tonight he just wants to give you a refreshing moment of that promise. So as Emily starts to sing tonight, if our leaders who aren't responding tonight, if you would just make your way down, Jazz and Daniel, whoever's not responding, if you just start making your way across this room and start praying for people. And Emily starts singing, and guys, can we just seek after God for a few moments? Let's lift our hands. God, I pray tonight that you would speak to each and every one of these young adults that are here, standing at this altar, seeking after you. God, I pray that you would give them a refresher tonight of your promise that you've given them. God, that you would speak to them, and that you would give them just a confidence. Give them a fresh expectation of what you want to do in their life. God, I pray that when things get tough, they wouldn't lose sight of your promise. God, I pray that they would put in the work to seek after your promises. Come on, let's sing that together as you seek after him tonight. Something has to break. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Sing it out. Something has to break. Maybe tonight you're at your end's road with trusting in God. And you're like, if something doesn't happen tonight, then I'm walking away completely from God. Keep pressing on. Come on. Just sing this for a few moments. circle up, y'all. Sing it together. We're in this moment. That's our cry, God, that something has to break. Sing, I believe. And I believe through it. I believe through it. I believe. Carrie, if you can get Bucky, Christian, and Stevie, Matt, and David. Come on. Daniel, can you come pray with Josiah? Out there ready for you to go, but like I say every revive, don't just leave and get in your car and go and not do community with people. Stay, hang out, eat a taco. If you're still down here and you're still praying, we're going to keep going. But really quick, just a few things. If you are new and you're about to head out, thank you so much for coming tonight. You can follow us on our Instagram, @Vive. If you ever need anything, you can reach out. We're here for you. Grab a t-shirt. We'll have someone at that table. $15 tonight, and they jump up in price. Next week's our Freedom Fest. Come and hang out. Make sure you get your deposits turned in for Young Adults Retreat. We're not going to have a formal dismissal tonight, so Vive, if you want to stay and pray, if you want to stay and sing, that's fine. If not, guys, we love you. Have a great night. Go eat some food. Let's just pray. Girls, if you want to get together with girls, you can. Guys, if you want to circle up, you can as well. right now in your name. Something has to break. Something has to break. Something has to break. Right now in your name. Something has to break. Something has to break. Right now in your name. We sing, I believe. I believe you lead me through it. I believe you lead me through it. I believe you will do it right now. Something has to break. I believe you lead me through it. I believe